History suggests that sectors have a greater potential to over and underperform during U.S. presidential election years, but finding the right sector candidates to endorse can be challenging. Hello, I'm Ed Ware, and I lead the Wealth Management Channel team in the Americas here at S&P Dow Jones Indices. Joining me today to explore sector performance in presidential election years are my colleagues Hamish Preston, our head of U.S. equities, and Anu Ganti, our U.S. head of index investment strategy. Hamish, Anu, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Ed.
Nice to be here.
Excellent. So Hamish, to get things started, tell us why election years tend to offer opportunities for more outperformance.
So I think if we look historically, many investors have taken a sector perspective around US elections as a way to express views on the incoming administration's policies and their anticipated impacts on different parts of the market as deemed by the investors themselves. And so in research that Anu's published and other colleagues as well, what we've noticed in Novembers of US presidential election years is above average importance of sector membership in terms of driving the performance of different stocks. And once again, I think that's the idea that investors have been reacting to the candidates' policies and the winning candidates' policies and how they expect those policies to impact different parts of the market differently.
Okay, so one follow-up question here would be, is this phenomenon persistent across the cap spectrum, or is this kind of a large cap thing?
So I think what's interesting is if you look globally, this type of observation does crop up across different markets, the idea of having a sector perspective around elections. So it's pretty common around the world. But across the cap spectrum, if you look at mid caps and small caps, what's interesting to note is rather than it being the US presidential election, it's the congressional election months where you see a higher than average importance of sector membership for mid caps and small caps, as represented by S&P Mid Cap 400 and S&P Small Cap 600 sectors. And perhaps one explanation for that is those companies are typically more domestically focused, and perhaps the congressional election results have more of an impact on those types of companies.
Oh, interesting. So it's wise to keep track of U.S. presidential election years and congressional election years.
Indeed, according to history, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so over to you, Anu. So do sectors offer more capacity for active managers to add value than, say, single stocks, perhaps?
Yes, so the answer is they absolutely do. And one stat for you is the capitalization of the average sector is roughly 10 times greater than the average stock, if you think about it. So when you think about capacity and measuring the relative value of insight, there's really two components. There's dispersion, which Hamish just talked about, and there's also size. And I think a great example of this is looking at small cap stocks. And if you look at small cap stock dispersion currently, it's relatively high compared to history. But that's not telling us the full story because we need to factor in size. So we have research that Hamish and my colleagues published that has a measure called capacity adjusted dispersion, where we do exactly that to incorporate capacity to measure the relative value of insights. So I think that's really important when thinking about measuring the relative value of insights. Sectors also give you greater capacity. And I think it's so timely as we sit here now in an election year where there's so many elections taking place all around the globe. And final point coming back to sectors is they really offer this trade-off between dispersion and capacity. So if you think about it and look at stock level dispersion, the dispersion of 500 stocks will always be greater than the dispersion of the 11 gigs sectors, right? But then you have to factor in capacity, and that's where sectors are really powerful. So it's interesting to see this trade-off for sectors as well.
Okay, so following up on that, so what are some of the potential opportunities as well as some of the potential risks for associated with chasing sector performance, and how can indices, help market participants understand trends as well as express their investment views on sectors?
Yes, no, it's important to keep in mind that sectors evolve over time, right? They change over time. A great example of this is look at telecom, which transformed into communication services as the way we communicate has changed. So indices offer a reflection of that. Another example is looking under the hood at the factor characteristics of sectors. Look at the technology sector, for example, which has a greater quality tilt than it did back in the 90s during the heyday of the tech bubble. So you can look at this symbiotic relationship between sectors and factors and tying in capacity, tying in dispersion, everything that we talked about. Really relevant if you think about sector allocators right now, sector rotators rotating among sectors, tactically expressing market views will be very timely as we sit here in this election environment.
Got it. And can you share some of the resources that maybe you produce that can help people, find these insights that are so timely?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a range of resources. We have a monthly sector dashboard that we produce where we report on performance, we report on factor exposures. We also talk about dispersion and correlation, and we track their movements over time. One of my favorites is just the contribution that sectors have to total market dispersion, which really, going to Hamish's earlier point, tells you when sectors really matter more. And as we've seen, historically matter more during those November months, during election years. So that's one resource. We also have an industry dashboard where we go more granular, looking at the range of industries, tracking performance, tracking their correlations. So important when thinking about the diversification potential for that sectors and industries offer as well.
So there's no shortage of timely resources these days.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Hamish, for your time and your insights today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
For more information on indexing sectors and to get our complimentary research and data, including our paper Sector Effects During Elections, visit us at the link below.